In this video, we're going to take a quick look at Photoshop blend modes. Now, blend modes let you combine the pixels on one layer with the pixels on the layers below in interesting ways. And to demonstrate this, first of all, we're going to need to bring in another image on top of this image. So I've got a picture of some texture here, and I'm going to use the Move tool and click and drag that up to my other image and down in and release to copy the texture over. Then I can sit the texture over my image like that. So now you can see I've got two layers in my layers panel here. My texture layer, in fact let's rename it texture, and my background layer, which is the flowers. Now if we highlight that texture layer, we can go to the blend mode drop down here at the top of the layers panel, and this gives us a list of 27 different blend modes to choose from. And the easiest way to get to grips with how blend modes work is to simply cycle through these different blend modes. So we can obviously just click on them to select them if we like, and you can see they give us a range of different effects like this. Or a quick way to cycle through, if we use the keyboard shortcut Shift plus and Shift minus, we can cycle through the list in this way, and we can just find a blend mode that gives us an interesting effect. And I quite like the soft light effect on this particular texture here. Hard light is quite interesting too. So you can see we can cycle through all of those different blend modes. Now, just one quick tip when you're using this keyboard shortcut Shift plus or Shift minus to cycle through. Notice if we have a tool selected, and if that tool has blend modes available to it, such as the brush tool here, that shortcut will actually cycle through those brush modes rather than the layer blend mode. So you want to make sure if you want to use this shortcut that you don't have a tool selected that has those blend modes included within the tool. So again, we can just cycle through or choose the mode that we like. And we can of course also use the opacity slider here to blend our two layers. We can just knock down the opacity to tone down the effect until we get the right amount of texture in our image like that. So blend modes are great fun, and they give us this ability to create really interesting effects really very quickly. We could perhaps add in another texture here. So again, I'll use the Move tool, drag that into my image and sit it on top like this. And again, we can just experiment with the blend modes here using the keyboard shortcut Shift plus and Shift minus to cycle through these different modes until we find a mode that works for us. And perhaps the vivid light works here. Again, maybe let's lower the opacity slightly and toggle that off and on and see how that affects the mix. So we can kind of build up the effect here with different blend modes and different layers to come up with some really unique, interesting effects. If I had to choose my favorite blend modes, I'd probably go for these selection here. We go for darken and multiply here at the top here, lighten and screen in the next section, and overlay and soft light. I find these 6 blend modes are usually the most reliable at blending two images together in interesting ways. But as I say, it's always worth experimenting with the other blend modes along with adjusting the opacity and the fill sliders in the layers panel. Now let's just take a quick look again at those brush blend modes. So I'm going to grab the brush tool from the tools panel over here, and as I say, this features a set of blend modes that are very similar to the blend modes found in the layer drop down. But rather than affecting the blend between two layers, what this does is affect the blend between the paint that you apply with the brush and the image below. So for example, if we set the blend mode here to color dodge, and let's just highlight that flowers layer, and we'll also hide those top two layers, and let's just choose a color here. So perhaps we could go for maybe a pinkish reddish tone like that. And now as we paint, you can see how we get this kind of effect where the paint is applied with the color dodge blend mode applied to it to give us another interesting set of effects. And let's just undo that a second, and we'll try another blend mode. Notice in the drop down here we have a couple of other different blend modes that we don't actually see in the normal layer blend mode drop down. We have behind and clear. Now behind is rather a curious one. First of all, to show you how it works, I just need to make a selection. I can just select perhaps one of the flowers here using the quick selection tool like this. Let's just tidy up that selection a little, and then I'm going to duplicate it with Command or Control and J, and also just hide the background layer. So now we've got just a quick cutout of our flower. If we grab the brush tool now and set the blend mode here to behind, and let's choose a different color for this. Let's go for a blue color. And now when we start painting on that layer, you can see because our brush blend mode is set to behind, what we actually get is an effect where we can only paint over the transparent pixels. So this is what behind does. It lets us paint over transparent pixels, but preserves any existing pixels on the layer. So we can paint over the background without affecting the flower cutout like that. So that's rather a curious one. Now let's just delete that layer and reveal our flowers layer again, because I want to show you how we can also use blend modes in combination with adjustment layers. So I can click the create adjustment layer icon here in the layers panel, and we can go for anything we like. Let's go for levels. We can just leave that layer untouched and change the blend mode here from normal to screen, and that will create kind of a brightening effect. And then we can hit Command or Control and I to invert that layer's mask to black. Then we can use the brush tool with white as our foreground color to reveal that lightening effect over the areas that we want. So this is kind of an interesting way to dodge and burn our images. So we can lighten, and we can use a similar blend mode. If we just add another levels adjustment layer, again, it doesn't really matter what adjustment layer we use for this, then we can use the multiply blend mode here, and that gives us a darkening effect. Again, we can hit Command or Control and I to invert the mask's thumbnail to black, and then again we can grab the brush tool, we can set our foreground color to white, and we can paint to create a darkening effect around our image like this. So you can see we can use blend modes in combination with adjustment layers to darken and lighten parts of our image to dodge and burn. Now we can also use other effects with adjustment layers. So I can click the create adjustment layer icon now, and let's perhaps go for black and white this time. And normally, of course, black and white gives us a monochrome image, but if we change the blend mode here from normal to luminosity, notice now how our adjustment layer affects the brightness of colors rather than the saturation. So for example, we can adjust the red slider here, and you can see that allows me to change the brightness of the reds, and similarly with the yellows and the greens. So we can use the black and white adjustment layer to actually affect the brightness of colors in this way, simply by changing the blend mode of that layer to luminosity. So there we have it. That's a quick introduction to Photoshop blend modes, and of course there's plenty more to explore if you think about all the different combinations of adjustment layers, blend modes and layer effects that you can create, along with of course all the brush blend modes as well. There's plenty to explore and plenty of fun to be had with Photoshop blend modes.